confirmed within moments of starting this game. That being said, there are spoilers in the intro that I'm not showing because, well, really they actually managed to set this plot up pretty well. That was something I was just a little bit worried about on account. The idea of Dishonored is that you are essentially outcast from society for a bad thing you did, but you didn't actually do it and you have to prove that and save society and all that. I wasn't sure they were going to be able to set up another instance of that again, but they did, and it's great. And I'll tell you this right now, I'm in the middle of an Emily Caldwin playthrough. I'm loving it. She is a great character. I love her voice acting. Her motivations appear to be actually not just skin deep, despite the fact that they kind of are. Really, if you boil it down, at the core, this is essentially her trying to get her world back. But she comes off as a much more well-developed character, and I'm really appreciating that. What's odd is she kind of feels like she is the logical development of the story itself, whereas I feel like if I played as Corvo, and I may be wrong about this because I haven't yet, I'm going to, my second playthrough is going to be a Corvo one, but it feels more natural to be playing as Emily, as it feels more fresh and new, and like the story is continuing in its most logical way. The first mission is an absolute stellar means of introducing you to a lot of the newer mechanics without being a tutorial. There is a tutorial, and if you did not play Dishonored 1, first off you should have, second off the tutorial will basically help you get into this without being lost. That being said, you are already lost, being that you have not played the first Dishonored. It is not that expensive anymore, and it is fantastic. For the uninitiated, Dishonored is kind of a first-person shooter, kind of not. It's more centered on stealth, in my opinion anyway. If you want to play it violently and kill everyone, you're more than welcome to, and it really does a great job of making all of that feel very satisfying and fun. I like my Dishonored stealth. That being said, most of the powers eventually got geared more towards killing in the original Dishonored, and it kind of made it feel like you weren't being rewarded for playing as a stealth player, despite that giving you the quote-unquote good ending, which is strange. They kind of gave you weird mixed signals about everything, and I feel like that's kind of gone. Where I am right now, which is a few hours in, I don't feel as though I'm being given mixed signals. I feel like I'm being given various tools that I'm allowed to explore however I want. The game, at pretty much any chance it can have, makes sure and reminds me that there are many different ways to do all of the things that I want to do, or really, let's be real, have to do in order to progress in the game. And being I'm a stealth player, for whatever reason it feels quite natural with her. Emily kind of starts off with a bizarro blink power, which blink was the teleport power from the first game. Hers kind of works more like a grappling hook. It's kind of more tentacly and weird looking, and it functions pretty much in the end a lot like Blink if Blink had an arc, you know, like a grenade throw. But in some ways, she kind of comes off as a bizarro Corvo from the first game, or even maybe a little bit closer to Dowd. Sort of variations on the same powers, but not necessarily the exact same powers. I like that. I think that it feels neat that the outsider gives different versions of the powers to different people, or even outright different powers entirely. The further you get, the more the powers divert from Corvos, and they get pretty cool, might I add. Again, keeping it light on spoilers here, I'm not going to say my favorite, but I am going to say that I'm one of those people who definitely relies on the most basic powers in interesting ways, and I've found ways that Far Reach has already worked in the way I liked Blink working in the first game. AI, I have to say, is vastly improved from the original Dishonored. I'll say that without a question. It actually kind of seems like these enemies have some degree of smarts. They're still possible to outwit in ways that would not happen in real life, but it is definitely better. An example of this was I continually tried to mess with this one guy, first throwing a piece of fish behind him to see if he'd react like every video game character reacts to a sound. No, he looked at that, then he looked at me and ran at me. I thought, oh, maybe it was just that a fish makes a crappy sound. Maybe they made it so that a louder sound, like a glass breaking, would produce results that I was trying to induce a little bit more. Not necessarily better results. Again, looked at the glass and seemed to notice that it had been thrown there. He looked around, saw me, And it's like, all right, well, I guess I actually do have to try to be stealthy rather than just rely on pretty primitive AI, which I often did in the original Dishonored game. So in that respect, their proprietary Void engine is better than the Unreal Engine 3 that they used for the previous game, the Void engine being a modified version of the ID Tech engine, which Bethesda now owns. Other hallmarks of a better engine include significantly better graphics. They did not try to go to photorealism, which I do appreciate very much, but the environments and the effects, particularly the atmospheric ones, character models, basically everything looks significantly better than it did in the original Dishonored, which was a lot of complaint that people had with the original Dishonored. I thought the original Dishonored was pretty good. I didn't think it was the best looking game, but I loved the style, I loved the dinginess, but the somehow strangely exaggerated but not cartoony look. It's difficult to describe, but they retained it pretty much perfectly and developed it into something that is just significantly more enjoyable for me. The game still has some graphical seams, so to speak, that are relatively easy to find if you're looking for them, but I don't think there are going to be any times that you just stop playing and say, wow, that looks bad. And there were in the original Dishonored, to be completely clear. Speaking of things that are different for Dishonored 2, you start off the game in Dunwall and then travel to a new place called Karnaca, which has a very different look, but you're immediately introduced to it as a place that is kind of faltering. Things aren't going perfectly well there. It's not necessarily the hellhole that Dunwall was depicted as in the first game during the Rat Plague, but there's stuff going on that is not utopian, let's just say. It is a very pretty city and has a pretty distinctly sort of Italian feel to it, and it really comes off as kind of a bizarro Dunwall. It's definitely a nicer place, but is not that dissimilar in many other ways. The gameplay can only really be described as Dishonored but smoother. It felt more natural, movement felt a lot better, tighter, so to speak, and some of the more level-specific gameplay elements that they've added in, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you've gotten there. It involves time, but we already knew about that to some degree. Just playing it was phenomenal. This is such an inventive game without seeming like a foreign game. It still feels like Dishonored. Everything still looks, acts, sounds like Dishonored, except for it works better and it looks better and there's much more variety as you continue the game. What's odd is how much of a sandbox philosophy has developed out of the gameplay mechanics from the first without abandoning the narrative structure. And I think that's kind of the thing that attracts me to Dishonored the most. It gives me all of the things that I want out of a sandbox style game while still putting me through a narrative that I care about and enjoy. So far, I'm really into what they've been giving me in this game. It feels like it's living up to the potential that Dishonored almost lived up to in the last game. Would I say buy it? I'd say yes. Buy it. If you like stealth or first-person shooters, have a little bit of patience. Not necessarily a huge amount, but there is some waiting and planning and plotting and figuring things out. And especially given the amount of branching paths you can take using the tools you've been given, it merits you putting some time into your thought process as you progress in it. Or just kill your way through it, that's fun too. I have to add as a really quick note, I played the game on PS4. There's not really any performance issues that detract from the game in any way, and it's my understanding that the Xbox version runs pretty much about the same. But people have been experiencing performance issues on the PC. Fortunately, Bethesda will be releasing a performance patch, quote-unquote, within the coming days that not only promises to fix the frame rates, but also smooth out mouse input. But for console owners now, as well as PC owners very soon, really it's just a very fun game that gives you the ability to play it how you want to play it, and it delivers on that promise. It also gives you a fun narrative. I have to emphatically say that I think this is a fantastic game, and I love it. Love it! Have you played Dishonored 2? Let us know what you think about it in the comments. If you haven't, are you going to buy it? Are you not going to buy it? Does it seem appealing or no? And if you like this video, don't forget, please click the like button, as well as subscribe, of course. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week. Best way to see them first is a subscription. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on Game Rakes.